Zarathi pulled her worn cloak tighter around her shoulders as she walked through the busy market. The fabric was old and had holes in it, but it was all she had to keep the cold air from touching her skin. Behind her, 2 small children followed. Close. They kept their heads down and stayed quiet, just like she had taught them. The market was full of people from different worlds. Some had fur, others had extra arms, and a few looked almost like humans but with different colored skin. But none of them looked like Zarathi and her children. They were different in a way that made others uncomfortable. Zarathi stopped at a food stand. The vendor was a large creature with 4 eyes and thick purple skin. He was selling fresh fruits that smelled sweet and looked delicious. Her children had not eaten anything good in 3 days. Their stomachs were empty and making noise. "Excuse me," Zarathi said in a soft voice. "How much for 2 small fruits?" The vendor looked up at her. His 4 eyes moved from her face to her children. She saw his expression change. His mouth turned down and his eyes became hard. "We don't serve your kind here," he said. His voice was rough and unfriendly. Zarathi felt her heart sink. This happened every day, but it still hurt. "Please, my children are hungry. I have credits to pay," said no. The vendor turned his back to her. "Move along. You're scaring my customers." He did not understand why people were always mean to them. His little sister Myra, who was only 4, held onto Zarathi's hand tighter. They walked away from the fruit stand. Zarathi tried 3 more vendors, but they all said the same thing. No one wanted to sell food to a family like theirs. Some people even made faces at them or said mean words. The mining station where they lived was not a kind place. It was built inside a big asteroid and the walls were always cold. The air recyclers made strange noises and the lights flickered sometimes. Most people who lived here were miners or traders who stopped for supplies. Nobody wanted to stay long, Zarathi. And her children had been living here for 2 years. They had come here because it was the only place that would let them stay. But even here they were not welcome. As they walked through the metal corridors, other people moved away from them. Some pointed and whispered. Others just stared. Zarathi kept her children close and tried to ignore the looks. Mama Kin said quietly, "Why don't people like us?" Zarathi stopped walking. She knelt down so she could look at her son's face. Kin had her scaled skin, but it was lighter than hers. His eyes were brown like a human's, not the yellow color that her people had. His hair was dark and curly, something that only came from his human father. "People are afraid of things that are different," she said. "You and Mira are special because you are part of 2 worlds. But some people think that is wrong. Are we bad?" Mira asked. Her voice was so small that Zarathi could barely hear it. "No, my little star, you are not bad. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." But even as she said the words, Zarathi wondered if she had made the right choice. When she found out she was going to have children, everyone told her not to keep them. Her own family said the babies would be monsters. The human father had promised to stay and help, but he left before the children were born. Now she was alone. With 2 children who did not fit anywhere in the galaxy, they reached their home, which was really just a small room in the lower levels of the station. The door was old and did not close properly. Inside, there was 1 bed, a small table, and a tiny cooking area. The walls were bare metal. Water dripped from the ceiling into a bucket. Zarathi looked at her credit account on her old data pad. She had enough money for maybe 3 more days of food. After that, she did not know what they would do. "I'm hungry, Mama," Mira said. Zarathi opened their food storage. There were some dried protein bars and a small container of juice. She gave each child half a bar and a sip of juice. It was not much, but it was all they had. "Tell me a story," Kin said as they sat on the bed together. Zarathi smiled, even though she felt like crying. "What kind of story?" "About Daddy. Tell us about our daddy again." Zarathi's heart hurt when Kin asked about their father. She had told them stories about him many times, but she always made him sound better than he really was. She did not want her children to know that their father had run away because he was scared. "Your father was a brave explorer," she said. "He came from a world called Earth, where humans live. He had kind eyes and a gentle voice. He said he loved us very much. Will he come back? Mira asked. I don't know, little star. I hope so. But Zarathi knew he would never come back. It had been 6 years since he left. She had never heard from him again. The lights in their room flickered and went out for a moment. When they came back on, they were dimmer than before. The whole station was falling apart. The mining company that owned it did not want to spend money on repairs. Mama, I'm scared, Mira said. Zarathi held both children close. Don't be scared. I will always protect you. But she was scared too. Tomorrow, the man who owned their room would come for payment. She did not have enough money. If she could not pay, they would have to leave. But where could they go? Outside their small window, she could see the black space between the stars. Ships came and went from the station, taking people to better places. But no ship would take her family. No place would welcome them. Kin fell asleep first, then Mira Zarathi sat awake, listening to their breathing. She thought about the choices she had made. She could have given up the children when they were born. Someone might have adopted them separately. They might have had better lives. But she loved them too much to let them go. They were part of her, and she was all they had. The next morning brought the same problems. No one would hire her for work. No one would sell them food at a fair price. The other children on the station were not allowed to play with Kin and Mira. Their parents said it was not safe. As the day went on, Zarathi felt hope slipping away. She had tried so hard to give her children a good life, but maybe it was impossible. Maybe the galaxy really had no place for families like theirs. That evening, as they sat in their cold room sharing another small meal, Mira looked up at her mother with tired eyes. Mama, are we ever going to be happy? Zarathi did not know how to answer. She wanted to say yes, but she could not see how. The future looked as dark as the space outside their window. I don't know, little star, she whispered. I just don't know. But she held her children close and made a silent promise. No matter what happened, she would never give up on them. They were her world, and she would find a way to protect them, even if it seemed impossible. Jake Martinez walked down the loading ramp of his cargo ship. The Wanderer was not the biggest ship in the spaceport, but it was reliable. He'd been flying freight runs for 8 years now, moving goods from one system to another. It was a lonely job, but it paid well enough. The Kepler-4 for to be mining station was not his favorite stop. The place was dirty, and the people were unfriendly. But they paid good money for the medical supplies and food he brought from the inner systems. He planned to unload his cargo, get paid, and leave as quickly as possible. As he walked toward the cantina to find something to eat, he heard raised voices coming from an alley between 2 buildings. Jake had learned to mind his own business in places like this, but something about the voices made him stop. You owe us the species tax, a rough voice said. Mixed breeds pay double. I don't have any more money, a female voice replied. Sounded scared, but was trying to be brave. Jake looked around the corner and saw 3 large aliens surrounding a smaller figure. The aliens were Korthok, a warrior species known for being bullies. They had thick gray skin and sharp teeth. The person they were bothering was much smaller and had 2 young children with her. Then maybe we take the kids as payment, one of the Korthok said with a nasty laugh. I know people who pay good money for exotic pets. That made Jake angry. He had seen a lot of bad things in his travels, but threatening children was something he could not ignore. He stepped into the alley. Hey, Jake called out. Leave him alone. The 3 Korthok turned to look at him. They were all bigger than Jake, but he had been in worse situations. During the war in the Centauri system, he had fought against much worse enemies. This is not your business, human, the leader said. His hand moved to the weapon on his belt. I'm making it my business, Jake replied. He kept his voice calm and steady. The lady said she doesn't have money, so why don't you 3 find someone else to bother? The Korthok looked at each other. They could probably beat Jake in a fight, but they also knew that humans had a reputation for being unpredictable in combat, especially humans who had been soldiers. You don't know what you're dealing with, the leader warned. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, Jake said. 3 bullies picking on a woman and her children. That makes you cowards where I come from. The word cowards hit the Korthok like a slap. Their culture valued strength and honor, even though they did not always show it. Being called cowards by a human was a serious insult. The leader started to reach for his weapon, but Jake was faster. He had his hand on his pistol before the alien could draw. The message was clear. If they wanted a fight, they would get one. After a long moment, the leader backed down. "This isn't over," he growled. But he and his friends walked away, leaving Jake alone with the woman and her children. Jake turned to look at the family he had helped. The woman was clearly not fully human, but she was not like any alien species he had seen before. She had scales on her skin that were a light green color, and her eyes were larger than a human's. But her basic shape was human-like. The 2 children were even more interesting. They looked like a mix of their mother's features and human features. The boy had his mother's scaled skin, but it was much lighter. His hair was curly and dark like a human's. The little girl had fewer scales and looked more human, but her eyes were the same large shape as her mother's. "Are you okay?" Jake asked. Woman nodded, but he could see that she was shaking. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to help us." "Yes, I did," Jake replied. "Are these your children?" "Yes, this is Kin and this is Mira." She put her hands on the children's shoulders. "I am Zarathi." Jake knelt down, so he was at the same level as the children. They were both staring at him with curious eyes. Had not been around children very much, but these 2 seemed different from other kids he had met. "Hi, Kin." "Hi, Mira," he said. "I'm Jake. Are you a space pilot?" Kin asked. His voice was excited. "Yes, I am. I fly a cargo ship." "Wow," Mira said. "A real space pilot." Jake looked back at Zarathi. What did those men mean about species tax? Zarathi's face became sad. It's what they call the extra money they make mixed families pay. They say, "We don't belong here, so we have to pay more for everything." Jake felt angry again. He had heard about this kind of thing in the outer systems, but he had never seen it up close. "That's not legal."
"Oh.
"Legal doesn't matter out here, Zarathi," said the station owners. "Look the other way, as long as they get their cut." Jake could see that the family was in bad shape. Their clothes were old and had holes in them. The children looked thin, like they had not been eating enough. Zarathi kept looking around nervously, as if she expected more trouble. "When did you last eat?" Jake asked. "Yesterday," Kin said before his mother could stop him. "Kin," Zarathi said softly. She was embarrassed. Jake stood up. "Come on, let's get some food." "Can't pay," Zarathi said quickly. "I didn't ask you to pay. I asked you to eat." Jake led them to the cantina. It was a rough place full of miners and traders. When they walked in, many people turned to stare. Jake chose a table in the back corner, where they would have some privacy. The cantina owner was a fat human named Pete. Looked at Zarathi and her children with disgust, but he was too afraid of Jake to say anything. "For meals," Jake said. "The good stuff, not the cheap protein paste." "That's going to cost extra for them," Pete said, pointing at the family. Jake leaned forward. "No, it's not. You're going to charge me regular price, and you're going to be polite about it." Pete nodded quickly and went to get their food. While they waited, Jake learned more about the family. Zarathi told him that she was part of a species called the Veltar, but that her children's father was human. The father had left before the children were born, and she had been trying to take care of them alone ever since. "What kind of work do you do?" Jake asked. "I used to be a translator," Zarathi said. "I can speak 12 different languages. But no one will hire me here because of my children." Jake was surprised. Translators were valuable in space, especially ones who knew multiple languages. It was stupid not to hire someone like Zarathi just because of her family. The food came, and Jake watched the children eat. They were very polite and grateful, but he could tell they were hungry. They ate everything on their plates and asked if they could have more. "Of course," Jake said. He ordered more food for everyone. "Why are you being kind to us?" Zarathi asked. "Most humans want nothing to do with mixed families." Jake thought about the question. He was not sure why he was helping them. Maybe it was because he had been alone for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to care about other people. "I guess I don't like bullies," he said finally. "Are you going to have children someday?" Mira asked suddenly. Jake was surprised by the question. I don't know, maybe. You would be a good daddy, Mira said with a smile. Something about the way she said it made Jake's chest feel tight. He had never thought much about having a family. His life was spent traveling from system to system, never staying in one place. Long enough to form real relationships. After they finished eating, Jake walked them back toward their home. The lower levels of the station were even worse than the upper areas. The corridors were dark and smelled bad. Water dripped from broken pipes, and the air recyclers made grinding noises. When they reached their door, Jake could see how small and run down their living space was. It was barely big enough for one person, let alone a family of 3. This is where you live? He asked. Zarathi nodded, looking embarrassed. It's not much, but it's all we can afford. Jake looked at the children. Kin was examining the control panel next to the door with interest. Even though he was only 6 years old, he seemed to understand how the electronic systems worked. How does this work? Kin asked, pointing at the door controls. Jake showed him how the magnetic locks functioned and how the power flowed through the circuits. Kin listened carefully and asked smart questions. Jake was impressed by how quickly the boy understood complex ideas. Mira was more interested in Jake himself. She kept looking at him with curious eyes, as if she was trying to figure something out. You're sad, she said suddenly. Jake was surprised. What makes you say that? I can tell. You smile, but your eyes are sad. Jake did not know what to say. Little girl was right. But he had never expected a 4-year-old to notice something like that. That night, Jake went back to his ship, but he could not stop thinking about the family. He had plenty of money saved up from years of freight runs, but he had no one to spend it on. He lived alone, ate alone, and slept alone. Zarathi and her children had nothing, but they had each other. They were facing terrible problems, but they faced them together. Jake realized that he envied them in some ways. He also realized that he wanted to help them, not just with one meal, but with something bigger. The question was, what could he do? As he lay in his bunk that night, Jake thought about Mira's words. She had said he would make a good father. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. Maybe it was time to find out if she was right. Jake woke up early the next morning with a plan. He'd spent half the night thinking about Zarathi and her children. Their living conditions were terrible, and he could not stop thinking about how thin they looked. He went to the station's supply store and bought basic tools, some food, and a small heating unit. The store owner tried to charge him extra prices, but Jake had dealt with people like this before. He made it clear that he would pay fair prices or take his business somewhere else. When Jake arrived at their door, he could hear voices inside. Zarathi was trying to explain to her children why they could not have breakfast that morning. She did not have enough food left. Jake knocked on the door. When Zarathi opened it, she looked surprised to see him. Jake, what are you doing here? I brought some things, he said, holding up the bags. And breakfast. Zarathi stared at him for a moment. You don't have to do this. I know I don't have to. I want to. The children ran to the door when they heard Jake's voice. Their faces lit up when they saw the food he had brought. Can we really eat it? Mira asked. Of course you can, Jake said.
Us?
That's what food is for. While they ate, Jake looked around their small room. The heating unit was broken, which explained why it was so cold. The water recycler was making strange noises and one of the lights kept flickering. Your heating unit is broken, Jake said.
Yes, Zarathi replied.
It broke last week.
I asked the landlord to fix it, but he said it would cost extra.
Jake opened his tool bag. I can fix it. You know how to repair things? Kin asked, moving closer to watch a little bit. When you fly cargo ships, you learn to fix things yourself. Otherwise, you get stuck in space. Jake spent the next hour working on the heating unit. Kin stayed right beside him, asking questions and handing him tools. The boy was incredibly smart. He understood how the systems worked after Jake explained them just once. How does the heat get from here to there? Kin asked. Pointing at different parts of the unit, Jake showed him how the heating elements worked and how the air circulation system moved warm air around the room. Kin listened carefully and even suggested a way to make the airflow more efficient. That's a really good idea, Jake said. Where did you learn about air systems? I just watch things and try to understand. How they work, Kin said. Meanwhile, Mira was watching Jake's face while he worked. She had the same strange ability to read people that she had shown the day before. You like fixing things, she said. Yes, I do. It feels good to make broken things work again. You like helping people too? Jake paused in his work.
Oh, it makes...
You say that? I can tell. You get happy when you help us. Jake realized she was right. He had been feeling better in the past day than he had in months. Helping this family gave him a sense of purpose that he had been missing. When he finished with the heating unit, the room became warm for the first time in weeks. Zarathi almost cried when she felt the warm air. Thank you, she said quietly. You don't know how much this means to us. Over the next few days, Jake kept coming back. He fixed their water recycler, replaced the broken light, and even managed to improve their door so it closed properly. Each time he came, he brought food and small gifts for the children. KYN was fascinated by Jake's tools and wanted to learn how to use them. Jake started teaching him basic repair skills. The boy learned incredibly fast and soon was helping with the more complex repairs. Mira was more interested in Jake himself. She would sit nearby and watch him work, asking questions about his life and his travels. She wanted to know about different planets and the people who lived on them. Have you been to Earth? She asked one day. I guess several times. It's where humans come from. Is it nice? Parts of it are very nice. There are big oceans and green forests. The air smells clean. Do you think we could go there someday? Jake looked at her small, hopeful face. Maybe. Would you like that? Ah. Yes. I want to see the oceans. Zarathi was grateful for Jake's help, but she was also worried. She had learned not to trust people who seemed too good to be true. Why are you doing all this? She asked him one evening after the children had gone. To sleep? Jake was quiet for a moment. I'm not sure, he said finally. I've been alone for a long time. Maybe I forgot what it was like to care about people. You're alone by choice. At first, yes. After the war, I didn't want to get close to anyone. It hurt too much when you lost people you cared about. Zarathi understood that feeling. Changed? Jake looked at the corner where the children were sleeping. I met a little girl who told me I would make a good father. I started wondering if she might be right. Mira said that, yes, she sees things that other people miss. Zarathi nodded. Both of my children are special. Kin can understand any machine or system after seeing it once. Myra can read people's emotions and intentions. Sometimes I think their mixed heritage gives them abilities that neither humans nor Veltar have alone. That's amazing. Have you ever thought about getting them proper education? Zarathi's face became sad. Where? No school will accept them. Most places won't even let us stay long enough to try. Jake had been thinking about this problem. What if there was a place that would accept them? A place where being different was not a problem. There is no such place. There might be. I've heard about colonies in the Outer Rim where mixed families are welcome, places where they judge people by what they can do, not what they look like. Zarathi shook her head. Even if such places exist, how would we get there? I don't have money for ship passage, and who would take us? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He had been thinking about this for days, but he was not sure if he was ready to say it out loud. I could take you, he said finally. Zarathi stared at him. What? My ship has room for passengers. I could take you and the children to one of those colonies? Why would you do that? Jake struggled to find the right words because I care about what happens to you. All of you. Tears started to form in Zarathia's eyes. You barely know us. I know enough. I know that Kin is the smartest kid I've ever met. I know that Mira has a gift for understanding people. I know that you're a good mother who would do anything too. Protect her children. That's enough. But what about your job, your life? I can run cargo to the Outer Rim colonies just as well as I can run it anywhere else. Better, maybe, because I would have a reason to be there. Zarathi was quiet for a long time. Jake could see that she was thinking hard about his offer. People will think you're crazy, she said finally. A human helping a mixed family. Let them think what they want. I stopped caring what other people think a long time ago. What if the children don't like traveling in space? Are you kidding? Ken would love to see how a real spaceship works. Ken Myra would love seeing new places and meeting new people. As if to prove his point, Ken's voice came from the sleeping area. Did someone say spaceship? They turned to see both children sitting up, clearly having heard the conversation. Were you listening? Zarathi asked. Couldn't help it, Ken said. You were talking about spaceships and new places. Jake wants to take us away from here, Zarathi explained. To a place where families like ours are welcome? Really? Mira asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Really, Jake said. But only if your mother agrees, and only if you want to come. Yes, both children said at the same time. Jake looked at Zarathi. The decision is yours. Zarathi looked at her children's excited faces, then at Jake's kind eyes. She had learned to be suspicious of offers that seemed too good to be true. But she also knew that staying on this station would only lead to more suffering for her family. Where would we go? She asked. I know a colony called New Geneva. It's about 3 weeks' travel from here. They have good schools, and they welcome people from all species. I've delivered supplies there before. The people are kind. You would really take us there. I would be honored to take you there. Zarathi closed her eyes and thought about all the risks. But then she thought about the alternative. Staying here meant watching her children grow up as outcasts, always hungry, always afraid. Okay, she said quietly. We'll come with you. The children cheered, and Jake smiled wider than he had in years. For the first time since he had met them, the future looked bright. But none of them knew about the challenges that would come with their journey to find a new home. 3 days later, Jake finished loading his cargo and prepared the Wanderer for departure. Zarathi and her children stood at the bottom of the loading ramp, each carrying a small bag with their few belongings. Everything they owned in the universe fit into 3 bags. Are you ready? Jake asked. KYN nodded excitedly. He had been asking questions about the ship all morning. Mira held her mother's hand tightly, but she looked excited too. I'm scared, Zarathi admitted quietly. That's normal, Jake said. Big changes are always scary, but sometimes scary changes are the best ones. They walked up the ramp together. Jake sealed the ship and headed to the bridge. The children followed him, amazed by all the controls and displays. This is where you fly the ship, Ken asked. This is it. Would you like to see how it works? For the next hour, Jake explained the basic systems to Ken, while Mira explored the ship. The Wanderer was not a big ship, but it had everything they needed. There was a cargo bay, a small kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a common area where they could eat and relax. You can have the guest bedroom, Jake told Zarathi. The children can share it, or one of them can sleep in the common area if they want. Where will you sleep? Mira asked. I have my own room. Don't worry about me. When they were ready to leave, Jake sat at the pilot's controls. Everyone strap in. We're about to launch. The children had never been on a spaceship before. The engines started. They grabbed their seats and looked scared. But as the ship lifted off smoothly, their fear turned to wonder. We're flying, Myra said, looking out the window at the shrinking station. We're really doing it, Ken whispered. Jake smiled as he watched their reactions. He had forgotten how amazing space travel could seem to someone experiencing it for the first time once they were in deep space. Jake set the autopilot and gave the family a tour of the ship. He showed them how the air recyclers worked, how the artificial gravity was generated, and how the food synthesizers made meals from basic ingredients. KYN was fascinated by everything. He wanted to understand how each system connected to the others. Jake found himself enjoying the teaching. He had never realized how much he knew about ships until he started explaining it to someone else. The navigation computer calculates our path, Jake explained. It has to account for gravity from nearby stars and planets. How does it know where we are? Ken asked. It uses signals from special beacons called nav satellites. By measuring the time it takes for signals to reach us, it can figure out our exact position. Ken thought about this. So it's like triangulation? Was surprised. Most adults did not understand navigation that quickly. exactly like triangulation. How did you know that? I read about it in an old technical manual I found. But I didn't understand how it worked in space until now. Over the next few days, Jake began to understand just how special these children were. Kin did not just ask questions about the ship's systems, he started suggesting improvements. Hash I'm doing I'm in a regular and I do and Grad and Rebecca and Charka I'm Sodoms and I'm Surreonatress and I then some of his ideas were so good that Jake actually implemented them. What if we rerouted the power flow through this juncture instead? Kin asked while they were working on the environmental controls. Jake looked at the boy's suggestion. That would reduce power loss by about 12%. That's brilliant. Really? Really? Where did you learn about power systems?
I just watched
How things work and try to understand the patterns. Mira's abilities were different but equally impressive. She seemed to know how everyone was feeling without being told. When Jake was worried about something, she would bring him a cup of coffee without being asked. When her mother was sad about leaving their old life behind, Mira would sit with her and tell funny stories. How do you always know what people need? Jake asked her one day. I just look at their faces and listen to their voices, Mira said. People show their feelings even when they try to hide them. That's a very special ability. Mama says I get it from both sides of my family. Humans are good at reading emotions, and Veltar can sense what others are thinking. Jake was learning about their family history too. Zorathi told him more about her people during their long conversations in the evenings. The Veltar were peaceful species who valued knowledge and cooperation. They had been explorers and diplomats before the war between the major powers. Made space travel dangerous for smaller species. My people used to travel between the stars, learning about other cultures, Zorathi explained. We were teachers and translators. But when the big government started fighting, there was no place for people like us. What about the children's father? Jake asked carefully. What was he like? Zorathi was quiet for a moment. He was a researcher. He came to our world to study our language and culture. We fell in love. But when he found out I was pregnant, he became scared. He said his family would never accept mixed children. So he left. He said he would come back after he talked to his family. That was 7 years ago. Jake felt angry at a man he had never met. How could someone abandon their own children? Sorry, he said. Don't be. It brought me Kin and Myra. They are the best things in my life. The journey to New Geneva was supposed to take 3 weeks, but they were only halfway there, and trouble found them. Jake was on the bridge checking their course when the proximity alarm started beeping. 3 ships had appeared on the scanner, moving fast toward them. What's happening? Zorathi asked, coming onto the bridge. Company, Jake said grimly. And not the friendly kind. The ships were getting closer. Jake could see from their design that they were pirates. They were fast and heavily armed. Attention cargo vessel. A voice came over the radio. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Jake looked at Zorathi and the children. Kin looked scared but was trying to be brave. Mira was holding her mother's hand tightly. Are they bad people? Mira asked. Yes, Jake said. But don't worry, not going to let them hurt you. Jake had 2 choices. He could surrender and hope the pirates would just take his cargo and leave them alone, or he could fight. The Wanderer had some defensive weapons, but it was no match for 3 pirate ships. Jake, Zorathi said quietly, don't risk your life for us. Just give them what they want. No, Jake said firmly. These are my passengers. My family. I protect my family. Jake turned to Kin. I need your help. Can you handle the power systems while I fly? I think so, Kin said, moving to the power control station. Mira, I need you to watch the scanner and tell me what the pirates are feeling. Can you do that? I'll try, she said. Jake pushed the engines to full power and turned the ship toward the nearest asteroid field. If he could get there, the rocks would make it harder for the pirates to surround them. They're firing, Zarathi said. Energy bolts flashed past the ship. Jake twisted and turned, using every trick he had learned during the war. The Wanderer was a cargo ship, not a fighter, but Jake had added some modifications over the years. Kin, I need more power to the rear shields, Jake called, Kin said, working frantically at the controls. There, I found an extra 15%. Good job. They reached the asteroid field with the pirates close behind. Jake flew between the floating rocks, using them as cover. The larger pirate ships had trouble following him through the narrow spaces. They're getting frustrated, Mira said, watching the scanner. They want to give up, but their leader won't let them. Which one is the leader? Jake asked. Myra studied the display. It's the big one on the left. He's very angry. He turned the ship toward the largest asteroid in the field and accelerated straight at it. What are you doing? Zarathi asked. Trust me, Jake said. At the last second, Jake flipped the ship and fired his rear thrusters at full power. The maneuver sent the ship sliding along the asteroid's surface while the pursuing pirates had to brake hard to avoid crashing. The leader's ship was not able to stop in time. It scraped against the asteroid and lost power to its engines. Now, Jake said, spinning the ship around and firing his weapons at the damaged pirate ship. The other two pirate ships saw their leader in trouble and moved to help him. That gave Jake the chance he needed to escape the asteroid field. We did it, Kin shouted as they left the pirates behind. We make a good team, Jake said, smiling at the boy. Mira was looking at Jake with new respect. He really would protect us from anything, wouldn't you? Yes, Jake said without hesitation. I would. For the rest of the journey to New Geneva, the family grew closer. Jake found himself thinking of them not as passengers, but as his real family. The children started calling him Uncle Jake, and sometimes Mira would slip and call him Daddy. Each time she did, Jake felt something warm in his chest. Maybe this was what having a family was supposed to feel like. When they finally reached New Geneva, Jake realized he did not want the journey to end. Somewhere along the way, these three people had become the most important thing in his life. The first thing Jake noticed about New Geneva was how different it felt from other places he had visited. As the Wanderer approached the space station, he could see ships from dozens of different species docked peacefully together. No one seemed to be arguing or fighting. Look at all the different ships, Kin said, pressing his face against the window. Is that a Zephyrian trader? Mira asked, pointing at a ship with bright blue markings. Yes, it is, Jake said, surprised that she recognized the design. How did you know? I read about them in one of your books. They're supposed to be very friendly. When they docked at the station, a customs officer came aboard to check their documents. Jake was nervous because Zarathi and the children did not have proper immigration papers. But the officer, a tall woman with kind eyes, just smiled when she saw the family. Welcome to New Geneva, she said. Are you seeking permanent residence? Yes, Jake said. This family needs a safe place to live. The officer looked at Zarathi and the children with interest, not disgust. Mixed heritage. Yes, Zarathi said quietly, waiting for the usual rejection. Wonderful. We have several mixed families here. The children will have plenty of friends to play with. Zarathi stared at the woman in shock. You mean we can stay? Of course, we just need to process some paperwork. It should take about a day. After the officer left, Mira hugged Jake tightly. We really found a good place, didn't we? Yes, little star, Jake said. I think we did. They spent their first day on New Geneva exploring the station. Jake was amazed by what he saw. Children from different species played together in the parks. Shops were run by beings he had never seen before, and everyone seemed to get along. At a cafe, they met a family with 3 children who were part human and part Altarian. The children immediately started playing with Kin and Mira, speaking a mixture of languages that somehow everyone understood. "Your children are delightful," the Altarian mother said to Zarathi. "How old are they?" "Kin is 6 and Mira is 4. Zarathi replied, still amazed that someone was talking to her normally. "Perfect ages for our school. We have an excellent program for gifted children." "Gifted?" Jake asked. "Oh yes. It's mixed heritage children often have abilities that surpass either parent species. We have special classes to help them develop their talents." Jake watched Kin explaining something mechanical to one of the other children, while Mira helped settle an argument between 2 younger kids. These children had never been called gifted before. They had only been called problems. That evening, Jake, Zarathi, and the children had dinner at a restaurant that specialized in food from different worlds. The waiter was a friendly being who looked like a cross between a human and a plant. "You're thinking of staying?" the waiter asked. "We hope so," Zarathi said. "Good. We can always use more families. This place was built for people who didn't fit anywhere else. Now it's home to the happiest community in the sector." After dinner, they walked through the residential areas. The apartments were clean and well-maintained. Children played in safe corridors while their parents watched and talked with neighbors. "I never imagined a place like this could exist," Zarathi whispered to Jake. "Neither did I," Jake admitted. The next day, Jake made a decision that surprised even him. He went to the colony administration office and filled out papers to become a permanent resident. "You're staying too?" the clerk asked.
Yes.
"This family needs me, and I need them." When he told Zarathi what he had done, she started crying. "You don't have to give up your life for us," she said. "I'm not giving up anything. I'm gaining everything that matters." 2 weeks later, Jake stood in the colony's main hall with Zarathi, Kin, and Mira. A judge was about to make their family official. "Adieu." "Jake Martinez promised to love and protect these children as your own," the judge asked. "I do," Jake said, his voice strong and clear. "Do you, Kin and Mira, accept Jake Martinez as your father?" "Yes," both children said together. "Then, by the authority of New Geneva Colony, I declare this adoption complete. Congratulations to the Martinez family." Kin and Mira rushed to hug Jake. For the first time in his life, Jake understood what it meant to be truly happy. 6 months later, their new life had settled into a wonderful routine. Jake had started a small freight business that served the outer colonies. He specialized in carrying supplies to places that needed help, often families like his own who were looking for new homes. Kin was excelling in the engineering program at school. His teachers said he had the potential to become one of the greatest ship designers in the galaxy. He was working on a project to make space travel safer for families. Mira was in the diplomatic training program. Her ability to read emotions made her incredibly good at helping people solve problems. She had already helped resolve 3 conflicts between different expert species on the station. Zarathi had found work as a translator and cultural advisor. Her knowledge of multiple languages and cultures made her valuable to the colonial government. She helped new families adjust to life on New Geneva, but the best part was that they were together. They ate dinner as a family every night. Jake helped the children with their homework. They played games and told stories. On weekends, they explored different parts of the colony or took short trips to nearby planets. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars through their apartment window, Mira climbed onto Jake's lap. "Daddy," she said. The word "still" made Jake's heart skip a beat. "Yes, little star? Are you happy?" Jake looked around at his family. Kin was showing his mother a new design he had drawn for a ship engine. Zarathi was laughing at something funny he had written in the margins. Their apartment was warm and filled with love. "I'm the happiest I've ever been," Jake said honestly. "Good. Because we love you very much. I love you too. All of you." A year after they arrived on New Geneva, Jake received an unexpected message. It was from a human military officer asking if he would consider helping with a special mission.
We need
Someone to evacuate mixed families from hostile systems, the officer explained over video call. Someone who understands what they're going through. Your name came up as someone who might be interested. Jake looked at Zarathi, who was listening to the conversation. It would be dangerous, she said. Yes, but think about all the families out there who are suffering like we were. We could help them find places like this. We, the officer asked. My family, Jake said proudly, can understand ship systems better than most adults. Myra can help scared families feel safe. And Zarathi speaks more languages than anyone I know. The officer looked surprised. You want to take your children on rescue missions? These children have already survived pirates and prejudice. They're stronger than you think, and they have abilities that could save lives. 3 months later, the Martinez family was flying through space again. This time they were not running from something or running toward families who needed help. Their ship, which Jake had renamed the New Hope, was specially designed for rescue missions. Kin had helped design improvements that made it faster and safer. Mira had suggested ways to make frightened passengers feel more comfortable. On their first mission, they rescued a family of human Centauri hybrids who had been hiding in an asteroid mine. The children were sick and scared, but Myra was able to calm them down while Kin helped repair their damaged environmental suits. Thank you, the mother said as they reached safety. We thought no one cared about families like ours. Someone always cares, Jake said. Sometimes you just have to look harder to find them. Over the next 2 years, the Martinez family helped more than 50 mixed families find new homes. They became famous throughout the outer systems as the family who never gave up on anyone. Kin grew into a brilliant engineer who designed ships specifically for refugee families. Mira became a skilled negotiator who could convince hostile governments to let families leave peacefully. Zarathi used her language skills to communicate with species that had never worked with humans before. And Jake found a purpose that was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. He was not just a father and husband. He was proof that love could overcome prejudice, that families came in all shapes and sizes, and that sometimes the most unlikely people could change the galaxy. On quiet evenings, when they were between missions, Jake would sit with his family and remember how they had met. Zarathi had been alone and hopeless. Her children had been outcasts with no future. Now they were a family that gave hope to others. Do you ever regret it? Zarathi asked him one night, giving up your old life. Jake looked at his children, now teenagers who were changing the galaxy with their talents and compassion. He looked at Zarathi, who had become his partner in every way that mattered. I didn't give up my old life, he said. I traded it for something infinitely better. In the vast darkness of space, surrounded by the people he loved most, Jake Martinez knew that he was exactly where he belonged.